Hello, and welcome to the Fear Channel, a channel with regular broadcasts telling the most chilling of urban legends, ghost stories, and forays into the darkest corners of the human mind. Those faint of heart or prone to night terrors should proceed at their own risk. Tonight's story is the portrait of a black magician, Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley has been referred to as the Beast 666, the father of thelema, and is the former head of both the Astrum Argentum and the Ordo Templi Orientis. He would frequently make an entrance uttering the phrase, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will." He grew to be infamous during his lifetime, and he was often referred to as the wickedest man on earth. His exploits were widely covered, and in many instances exaggerated, in the British and American press. As a child, Edward Alexander Crowley was relatively pious and good-natured. While the Crowley family grew rich from selling ale, Crowley's father was a devout radical Protestant minister. Aleister's father died when he was only 11. While he had heretofore devoted his life to his father's religious mission, after his father's death, Crowley grew to hate the church and everything it stood for, since he grew to notice more and more inconsistencies in the Bible. When his religious instructors could not answer his questions, Crowley grew disillusioned. After his father's death, Crowley always had a strained relationship with his mother. He is reputed as having convinced the household maid to have sex with him on his mother's bed out of spite. He was most happy when he left home to study at various schools and colleges. He was a regular troublemaker, and didn't stay at one particular school or institution very long, until he went to Trinity College in Cambridge. He received a third of his father's wealth from a trust fund at the age of 21 during his second year at Cambridge. It was around this time that Crowley began writing poetry of a most foul nature. His poetry collection, titled White Stains, depicted all manners of sexual perversion, from bestiality to necrophilia. After his studies, he would go on to join the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This began a long pattern of joining and rising to the top of occult societies. Upon reaching the inner circles of the OTO, Crowley was notorious for his lack of popularity with the other members of the group, mostly due to his libertine and hedonistic lifestyle. One of the most notable feuds was with fellow member and British author W.B. Yeats. After spending some time in the upper levels of the organization, Crowley left the order disillusioned of what occult knowledge they had to offer. It was around this time that Crowley performed the abramelin, a ritual for contacting one's higher self. It's considered to be dangerous because it releases other spirits, and the performer is in danger of becoming possessed. Crowley even went to the lengths of buying a house near Loch Ness, considering it the perfect location for the ritual. Performing the abramelin took up the next 6 months of his life. After a couple years of travel, as well as spending some time involved with Freemasonry, Crowley married Rose Edith Kelly in an attempt to save her from a previously arranged marriage. Although it was a marriage of convenience, the two did eventually fall in love. Their honeymoon was a period of uninterrupted debauchery, indulgence, and ritual. At one point during a ceremony in Cairo, Rose fell into a trance and kept repeating the words, "They are waiting for you." When Crowley asked who was waiting and where they were, Rose told him that the god Horus was waiting, and she took him to a wooden slab in a museum. This tablet was known as the Stele of Revealing. A week after this incident, Crowley began hearing a disembodied voice that called itself Aiwass and claimed to be a messenger of Horus. This voice dictated Crowley's work, the Book of the Law. This book became the centerpiece of Crowley's religion, thelema. 2 years later, Crowley divorced Rose, who had fallen into alcoholism. Crowley managed to spend the last of his inheritance around this time, and began accepting paying students to cover his expenses. To this end, Crowley formed a new occult order known as the Astrum Argentum. 3 years later, in 1912, Crowley also joined the Ordo Templi Orientis, and was instantly given the first 3 degrees. 2 years later, he would find himself at the head of the British branch of the organization. After spending the next 5 years of his life writing and wandering around the Americas, Crowley settled down in Sicily. Here he set up the Abbey of Thelema at the Villa Santa Barbara. This site became infamous for drug-induced sex magic, animal sacrifices, and all sorts of intoxicated revelry. Crowley called his bedroom at the abbey La Chambre des Cauchemars, which is French for the Chamber of Nightmares. The walls inside this room were hand-painted by Crowley himself, who had covered them with surrealistic monsters, hermaphroditic goblins, and all sorts of strange faces. Students who wanted to study at the abbey would have to spend a full 24 hours inside the room while on psychoactive drugs, which made the images in the room all the more vivid and frightening. This trial was necessary in order to desensitize students before further rituals could be completed. The abbey ran into problems when one of the students died. The British tabloids had been running articles on the abbey almost from its inception. Mussolini's government eventually learned of the activities at the abbey and had Crowley deported. Without his presence, the facility soon closed down, and Crowley was forced to travel and survive primarily by taking on more paying students. Crowley did affirm on several occasions that he was not a black magician, but the reliability of his own words are questionable. His sexual and mental deviance would lend credence to him being a follower of the left-handed path. While Crowley was performing the Abramelin in hopes of contacting a higher self, it is far more likely that he contacted a more malevolent power that manifested in the form of Aiwass. Unlike Rasputin, Crowley is not famous for very many public demonstrations of acquired powers. There is only one recorded instance of Crowley manifesting any sign of having attained any magical abilities, which he demonstrated to a local reporter. He did this by falling into step behind a distinguished-looking gentleman. After some time, he suddenly dropped to his knees in a squat. A split second later, he shot up again. The knees of the man he had been following suddenly buckled, and he toppled to the pavement below him. Crowley and the writer helped the man to his feet, who searched about as if looking for a banana peel or something that could have caused his fall. While this interaction does seem to imply some knowledge of interpersonal magnetism through force of will, the ramifications of this demonstration are hardly more than a parlor trick. By the end of his life, Crowley had spent all the money endowed to him by his family fortune, but was living in relative comfort due to the patronage of his secret societies and the royalties on his books. Crowley suffered from asthma in his later years and was prescribed heroin as a treatment, which was common in that day and age. He died on the 1st of December, 1947, from a combination of asthma and a weak heart. Dubiously enough, Crowley's physician, the one who had been supplying him with heroin, died just 28 hours after Crowley. Many have speculated that death magic may have been involved, and that this was Crowley's way of cursing his physician for not supplying him with enough heroin.